This is the 15LB rock tumbler from eBay. It's a Chinese built machine. It's been running in my workshop, rumbling away for 2 months. And in this review, I'll review the features of the machine. I'll tell you how it performed in the workshop. And at the end of the video, I'll tell you my conclusions. I'll tell you whether I think you should buy this machine or not. Hi, my name's Steve from the Stonecrafting Workshop. This particular rock tumbler I bought on eBay for £180. It features twin 3-pound rubber barrels and a variable speed control. When I bought this was listed as the 15LB rock tumbler. It's now listed as the 6LB rock tumbler. They're the same machine, they've just changed the name. It's Chinese made, and I bought it because I wanted the extra capacity to tumble more rocks. Let's take a closer look at the features. So here it is. It's a pretty heavy machine. It comes supplied with a UK plug and a variable speed control. And a variable speed control is also a transformer. So the input is 240 volt in this case, and the output is 24 volt. And that gives you the ability to speed up and slow down the tumbling process. The motor is mounted underneath the frame, the body of the frame, and there it is. The motor is mounted on 4 bolts that come through from the other side of the metalwork, and you can slacken those bolts off and move the motor around to slacken off or tighten the belt. I'll show you the belt in a second. The body of the machine is mounted on 4 rubber feet to prevent vibration and reduce the amount of noise. The belt itself is a round section poly belt, and it's mounted under this cover. And you access that by simply removing 2 screws at the side and popping off the cover. And there we are. There's the poly belt, drive and gear wheel. The framework itself, as I said, is pretty heavy. It's steel and it's painted. The barrels are rubber. Let's get a quick look at the barrels. The barrels are 3-pound rubber barrels. To take the lid off, you unscrew the rubber knurled nut. You just take off the top cover and take out the inner lid, part of the lid. This system is almost identical to the National Geographic lid. It's just more flimsy. It's not as strong. It comes with a set of instructions, a single sheet of paper and an extra little notation that's added. It gives you some information about the machine, but not a lot. The instructions themselves are written in very good English, unlike some Chinese machines, and are quite perfectly understandable, and I think this tells you everything you need to know. One bonus of this, although it's only written on a flimsy bit of paper, is the tumbling instructions themselves actually sound completely reasonable and plausible, and there are some useful tips in it as well. And they actually explain quite a lot about the tumbling process. It also comes with an additional note from the seller suggesting that you need to have a rigorous routine of oiling the bearings and the motor bearing. I'll talk about that a bit more in a minute. The rollers are pretty heavy duty and they don't flex at all. I've got 2 loaded barrels here. This is my Evans rubber barrel and a fully loaded barrel that the machine came with, and you put it on and it doesn't flex at all. The rollers are mounted on bearings, not bushes. Let's have a quick look. And here they are. So, how did my tumbler perform in the workshop? I've used it for 2 months, in fact over 2 months now, and I've tumbled agates and I've tumbled granite, and I've tried out various things. I tried a couple of tumbles that actually didn't work. That was my fault, not the tumbler. But I did have a couple of problems. Within 2 days of starting tumbling, the belt snapped, but I contacted the eBay seller and they sent me a replacement belt, and that's been running perfectly well ever since. And I also had a bit of trouble with one of the bearings rumbling a little bit, but that was because I forgot to oil it 1 week. So once I put a drop of oil on it, it ceased to be a problem. Apart from those 2 problems, it worked really well and has run absolutely reliably for all of those 8 or 9 weeks. The variable speed control works pretty well. You can start it off very slow and run it up to full speed. Now there's nothing in the instructions to tell you how fast this rock tumbler runs at, but that's actually true of every rock tumbler I've bought. But I can tell you, because I've checked it out, I've measured it, that it runs fully loaded, as it is now, at about 56 revs per minute. And that compares with, say, the beach rock tumbler, which is a fixed speed tumbler, which runs at about 48 revs per minute, fully loaded. So there's scope there for slowing the thing down and running it slower, which is in fact what I tend to do. I don't run it at full speed all the time. So this is a machine that's really interesting, but it does have pros and cons. Let's go through those now. Let's talk about the cons first, the things I'm not that keen on, and discuss them a little bit, and then we'll talk about the things I do like about the machine. The first issue I have with the machine is that I think this belt, as supplied, is too tight. I've slackened it off on the motor as much as it will, and I still think it's too tight. I've ordered new belt material, and I shall try and make up belts a little bit bigger. And in fact, the instructions say that the belt should be as loose as possible. Well, this is not loose, this is tight. Oiling all the bearings is very easy and very simple. I'll show you that in a few minutes, how to do that really easily. But to get to one of them, this motor bearing, the only way you can do it is by removing the cover and getting to it from this angle. In practice, what that means is I just leave the cover off. The only reason for putting a cover back on is to stop you catching your fingers in the belt drive. And the answer to that really is just don't put your fingers in there. While I quite like the variable control, I don't like the fact that it's kind of floating around. I would have preferred it was actually mounted on the machine, and I may try to do that. I may try to stick it on there with a bit of Velcro or something, but it's a fairly minor issue. But it does kind of float around on top of my bench in the workshop. When a rock tumbler's rolling, the barrels tend to roll up and down the rollers. They tend to move up and down on a sideways thing. They all do that. Don't let any manufacturer tell you that it's because you're not holding the base of the machine level. These things will climb uphill if the loading in the barrel is such. And the thing with this machine is the only thing that stops it is when the nut on the barrel touches the metal casing on the side. It's obviously designed to do that. So far I haven't noticed much wear on the nuts, and I've actually put a spot of oil on either side when I'm doing my oiling regime, and that seems to stop any sort of wear and tear. But it's not something I particularly like. I think I would have preferred it if there was some sort of sensible way of keeping the barrel away from the body of the machine. The barrels themselves are, as I said before, a similar design to the National Geographic barrels, but they are slightly less quality. Certainly the lids, which is why we've got this washer. Although it's handy if you're popping the lid off. The inside lid is just got a plastic cover and it's kind of slightly loose. No sign of it any wear and tear at all at the moment, but you know, for the future it might be an issue. And these lids are just very thin aluminium. You can't, when you put these together, to get the seal, you have to wind down the plastic knurl nut, and the two compress and form the seal, which means this is flexing down, and the nut, you're putting a fair amount of strain on the nut. It's not a plastic nut, it's got a brass knurl in it, but nevertheless it's slightly flimsy. That's not to say it's going to be a problem, but I think you have to be a little bit cautious with it. The rubber barrel itself seems okay. The other thing I'm not so happy about with this machine is the fact that there are no spares available. If anything does go wrong, you're on your own. But that actually is common to a lot of rock tumblers sold in the UK. Let's talk about the things I do like about this machine. I like the fact that it's twin barreled, and each of these barrels will take 3 pounds of rock, so it'll tumble 6 pounds of rocks at any one time, and that gives you a lot of scope for experimenting and trying out new things. I like the fact they're rubber barrels. These rubber barrels are pretty good. They seal very well and they're very convenient to use. I haven't actually had a leak out of one of these yet, and they're far more convenient to use than the Evans rubber barrel, which has an O-ring seal and which can be really fiddly to get to seal. I quite like the fact that the rubber belt is easy to access at the end of the machine. It's easy to pop on and pop off if you needed to. I was a bit ambivalent at first about the variable speed switch. At first I thought it was a bit of a waste of time, but I've actually grown to quite like it. I like the fact that when you start off with 2 full barrels, you can start it off slow and wind it up. I think that's putting less strain on the belt itself and probably the motor. And in the future, you know, I should be experimenting, tumbling different things. I'm a great one for trying things out, and the fact that I can tumble things really slowly might be a real advantage. I like the fact that the whole thing seems robust. In spite of the few niggles I've had about it, it all seems pretty robust. When it's tumbling, incidentally, it's really rock steady. No sense of wobbling about, which I actually get with another tumbler of mine. And lastly and not least, as I said, it tumbles a lot of rocks, and it tumbles them well. I've had some good polished rocks out of this, and I have absolutely no doubt whatsoever you'll be able to get some brilliant tumbled stones out of this rock tumbler. So, what are my conclusions after all that? Do I think you should go out and buy this particular rock tumbler, this 15LB rock tumbler? Well, bear in mind that it's a twin barrel machine. It has 2 rubber barrels and it tumbles 6 pounds any one time. You have to think about what are your alternatives if you want to tumble a lot of rocks. And there's not many. In the UK, there are not many alternatives. There's a British built rock tumbler that'll cost you £360. There's a £5 rock tumbler with a single barrel, and I think that's about £240 or £250. I personally wouldn't want to tumble £5 rocks at one time. And the only other alternative, I think, is to buy 3 National Geographic Hobby tumblers. That would cost you about £210 at the current price, and you'd then be able to tumble 6 pounds of rock in 3 2-pound barrels. And that's actually not a bad option to think about. But if you want to tumble a lot of rocks, if you want to tumble in 3-pound loads, I think this is a good machine. I like it. I'm hoping that it'll run and run and run. And at £180, it looks really good value. So thanks for watching. I hope you find this useful, and I hope it helps you make up your mind whether you want to buy this particular rock tumbler. If it did help you, please give me a thumbs up. And if you want to see more rock tumbling videos, please subscribe to my channel. I said I'd show you the easy way to oil the parts on a rock tumbler, and this applies to any rock tumbler. I simply have a little jar of oil that I keep by my rock tumblers. That's just the ordinary engine oil. And And I have a long handled paintbrush with a small tip, and with the machine running I simply go around 1, 2, 3, 4. I normally do the outsides just because I like to be thorough. And then round on the motor, you can get to the back of the motor, to the bearing with the brush. And of course you can do the inside of one of the bearings, and that's how you easily oil the bearings on your rock tumbler. Hope that helps you.